Hey everyone, you're gonna have to pardon my voice, but welcome back to another episode of Led by Life. It's been 3 months. I looked it up today.
Wow.
Yeah, but a lot has happened in 3 months. So happy New Year. It's 2025. Welcome. If you've listened to Hannah and I before, we talk about all kinds of things around human design, the gene keys, how all of that ties into life and very synchronistically always. Um, and just anything else that wants to drop in and drop down from us meeting together. So, welcome if you're new here. Welcome back if you've been here before. Hannah and I were just having a little catch up. And yes, my voice is going or gone. Can't tell.
You're going through a throat chakra up level.
Yes, that's what we concluded. I'm not in any pain. I don't feel ill. I'm, not even worried about it, honestly. And it's kind of
Yeah.
kind of weird, but when I was younger, you know how like some people, some kids are like, oh, I think it'd be really cool to have braces or to like break an arm and have a cast or like just weird things that would make you like stand out. Um,
Yeah.
well, when I was younger, I always wanted to lose my voice.
Really?
I just thought that the sound of it um was just kind of cool. I don't know what that's about, but I definitely don't have the full capacity of my voice. I was telling a friend today, I can't even really sing. Like I can't
Mm.
really sing, disclaimer, like that's not my talent. She's like, "Oh, that's too bad for you, I guess." 'Cause, doesn't sound any better. But how are you, Hannah?
I am good. I am good. I feel like a lot has happened in the last few months. It's been a longer break than we anticipated, but I think we needed it. Do you want to share a little bit about what we've been moving through, what's been
Yeah.
happening?
I
And
can't
yeah, obviously
remember
just
if
see how your voice goes.
I can't remember if the last episode we had, if I had mentioned that I was going through a breakup.
I
I
don't
can't,
think so.
maybe
No.
not. So, that happened for me. A relationship of mine, romantic relationship ended, and it brought on a lot of challenges, but also a lot of relief, which was a blessing. Um, what else? Because it was like the end. Yeah, we haven't really recorded since like November, I think it was early November. Um, and the last 3 months of the year, I've always said have been my favorite because so, and I'm back in Florida. I don't know if I mentioned that that was happening too, but here I am, in South Florida. And typically the last 3 months of the year, because most of the year is like warm, hot, rainy, there is a slight change in the atmosphere in the last 3 months of the year. And then it's the holidays, and I'm like, my four really wants to come out and play and hang out with everyone. And it's my birthday. So I've always loved it. But the last couple years living in California, it's felt really different. My environment was very different, and the feeling it gave me in the area I was in and who I was around was just different. Um, so that happened, and then I moved. Huge career change for me, still in the same realm and with the same company, but doing something that I told someone today feels like I'm not even working,
Mm.
which I don't think I mean, I've said that in my lifetime, but I'm just very, very blessed. Like I'm going into this year really blessed. And we caught up last week. Was that last week? And my body and my psyche and my mind like were not fully here all at once. But I'm glad to report that I feel much more grounded and like the whole of me is here. So today I was thinking like it's just beautiful when you get more data and information, especially like when you're working with human design, everything can kind of be an experiment. And I
Mm,
was realizing today that I got some data on myself that maybe when I go through big transitions, like huge transitions, it's okay if for like a couple weeks, one, it's always okay if you're going through an adjustment period. But for me, I have this expectation that I'm gonna roll right into the swing of things and, have everything settled. That's just me. Doesn't happen that way. But I gained some data about, maybe my body will be here but my mind and my psyche, maybe even my heart might not. So it's like the bottom half of me is physically here. Those energy centers are literally here. And then the top half of me is like hasn't fully planted in yet. And some messages from my body that help me realize that I've like fully arrived is that my dreams are clearer again.
mm.
And like I can remember the detail of them. I'm really good with my dreams. Like I love them. I sit and think about them and write them and everything. So, um, yeah, I'm doing much better than last week.
Yeah, you feel a lot more grounded and like back to yourself, you know?
Oh, thank you. How has your 3 months been?
Oh, um, I mean, really challenging, but also really I feel like I've arrived as well in the sense of like nothing in my external environment has changed. I'm in the same place, but I feel so much more settled within myself and grounded within myself. And if I think back to like when we started recording this podcast 18 months ago, however long it's been,
Yeah,
I don't know how long it's been. I feel like we're into our like second year of, well, we're into our third year of doing it.
third, yeah. Third.
Yeah. So I just feel like I just feel like I have nothing to prove now, and that just means that I get to just play. Like I've spent so long, and especially with human design and the gene keys, I've spent so long up here, like trying to make it make sense and figure it out and trying to live my design based on knowledge and logic. Whereas now I feel like I get to live it based on just being it and embodying it. And of course, there's always going to be more to uncover and explore, but it doesn't feel like this kind of urgency or this like, yeah, proving energy, like I have anything to prove. It's just like, okay, I just get to have fun with this and
Mhm.
be myself through this. But it was a challenging end to the year. I think shortly after we last recorded, I went through a pregnancy loss. And I know I've shared in the podcast before that motherhood is something, that's the next kind of big chapter of my life that I'm wanting to move into. So that was really sad. And I really had to practice trust. I've really had to be practicing trust. Like it's going to happen. It'll happen in the right time. It's going to be, exactly how it needs to be. But it doesn't take away from the sadness and the grief that came up, having all those hopes and dreams for that pregnancy and that baby. So that's something that my husband and I went through late last year. And then, but I will say, like, it's given me there's so many beautiful things that have come out of that. It's given me so much more love and compassion for myself, and it's given me so much open space now to really practice taking care of myself and mothering myself. I've had so many realizations over the last few months about beliefs that I've had that have been holding me back, limiting beliefs and patterns, unhealthy patterns that I want to let go of. There's been so much releasing and letting go. And I feel like that perhaps might not have happened if I hadn't experienced that. So,
Yeah.
just like finding the positives, focusing on taking care of myself. And I really feel like I'm in this place where I'm just like feeling good and enjoying my life and enjoying being myself. So yeah, it's life, ups and downs.
Yeah. You know, I
Yeah.
feel like we're even kind of coming to the space like you said, I feel lighter or more grounded, but I feel like, yeah, and I
Yeah.
feel like you have this essence of lightness right now. And I even feel like we're glowing, you know, not that there's so much sun coming in, but it feels really good to be back.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't have so we're up to the 39th gene key and
Yes.
human design gate. I don't have this one defined in my chart, but I mean, of course, we can all draw
Mhm.
wisdom and understanding from all of the different gene keys and gates and energies. But in the gift frequency, he talks about dynamism, like dynamic energy. And yeah, it feels lighter. It feels like you have so much more access to that life force energy when you let go of the struggle,
Mm.
when you let go, because that's not the shadow. The shadow is provocation, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, but the 38th gene key, the shadow is struggle, and these two are programming partners. So he talks a lot about this dynamic of these two shadow frequencies
Mm.
kind of working off each other. And that's a big thing that I've been exploring. I'd be interested to hear your perspective on this, but like struggle and having things be difficult and having just like fighting against life, resistance. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying before about, through this experience I've had recently with a miscarriage, like having to let go of control and let go of resistance, because there's just some things in life that we can't control. And like, how much space does that then open us up to access other parts of ourselves and energy?
Yeah. I realized that today I was like kind of looking through like our library and stuff, and it actually popped up on my TV, and the title to the last one was something, but I just remember the word struggle. And
Mm.
I felt inclined to look a little bit more. I had opened the book to the circuit, to the like explanation that of the circuit we're in, because for anyone who doesn't know, all of the gates and their pathways, I guess you could say, are um, defined by a circuit, whether it's individual or, and it's the way that energy moves in what um, relation it has to the person, whether it's individual or collective or tribe or um, there's one more.
No,
That,
that's the three: tribal,
oh, I was
individual.
thinking
Yeah.
because, yeah,
Yeah.
integration circuitry is within
Yeah.
the
I think
individual
that's
circuit.
technically individual, isn't it? The integration.
I think, yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but I was reading a little bit about the individual circuit and how it really is such a personal experience. And the energy that's flowing between the 38 and the 55th is, it's actually called the Gate of Emoting.
Mm.
Um, and when I think of like provoking, right, I think of it in like present tense, or maybe even past tense, like provoked. I and it's very much because also the individual is like a moment by moment experience. It's what's happening very presently with the individual. And now that I understand like the way it's connected to the solar plexus and the gate of emoting, it brings me to Richard Rudd's statement of um, it's all about your attitude, I believe is what he says in this reading. And
Yeah.
I've been watching lately for my watching myself lately to see where do I get provoked. Um, and I'm a pretty passionate person. I don't have this gate defined. I don't have the, oh, I do have the 30. We both have the 38th.
We have the 38th. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nick has the 39th.
Um,
Yeah.
but I don't have the 38th or the 55th. So all open here, open emotional solar plexus, open root. Um, so I think that anybody who kind of has some openness has some room for experimentation with this gate, specifically on just being open to receiving the message of what's happening when you're getting provoked. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, um, I get pretty passionate around wanting to do things a different way for the collective, but because I've been in myself, right? Like I've had that experience. So right now, just for some context, I'm working with clinical teams on how to enhance their programming that we're offering at various different facilities. And one, I'll say, when I left treatment, I work in mental health and substance use treatment. It's been primarily substance use treatment. I remember saying to myself, and I had just started working with Nikki too. I was like, I'm never going back to treatment. And here I am. And it's so funny because we can say we're never going to do anything. And I think I'm learning that, like, it's a false statement to say you're never going to do anything ever again. Um, I don't like to be black and white about things, but I don't think that we can honestly say that because we don't know. You really don't know where life's going to land you. And life brought me back to working in treatment, but honestly, in a tribe of people that my four has just always been very lit up about. The group that we have right now, we've known each other for quite a while. And I'm going off tangent. Let me bring it back. So I left for reasons in the sense like I wasn't finding balance within myself. It was very high stress. It was hard to keep up. I had a lot of opinions around the way in which it could function to be supportive for really its employees. And now I get that opportunity. And so when I come across something that I feel could change, I want to do it right then and there. I want it to just be fixed. And I'm learning that, you know, those these moments where I'm coming across certain issues or areas where I feel can benefit both those that we're serving and those that are serving, I get very sort of impatient. I've noticed some impatience in my experience, and provoke. What else? What else comes to me is I think of like someone purposely trying to bother somebody else.
Yeah, like wanting to get a reaction.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I love the um, metaphor or symbolism of the warrior and how he talks about at the gift frequency, the warrior still gets provoked, but it's like getting provoked for like the purpose of liberation, right? Or like to liberate people out of, or provoking others for the purpose of like breaking them out of their constricted and limited perspectives, attitudes, right? And then he talks about at the Siddhic level, the city of liberation, there's these rare warriors who are completely unprovocable because they realize that there's no one to provoke them. We're all one, there's this realization that, or this understanding that there is nothing personal because, and it's almost this idea of like, if you're trying to hurt someone else or you're trying to push someone else's buttons or provoke someone else, you're really just provoking yourself or like hurting yourself or it's like we're mirroring that energy. And he also talks a lot about this kind of back and forth, like victim and perpetrator.
Mm-hmm.
um is that the term he uses, or like abuser, victim and abuser, dynamic. this dynamic. So it's really interesting.
Yeah. You reminded me I had two completely opposite experiences with being provoked, I guess, or
Mm.
not. I don't know how to describe this word. Um, I was very reactionary to something that came my way. And I was telling you the story last week.
Yes. Yeah.
The details aren't necessarily relevant. And then maybe a week later or 2 weeks later after that situation happened, I had somebody tell me, yeah, but you're just completely unbothered. And I've been thinking it made the warrior and kind of how you were describing for us of how there are people who will provoke you to change or to
Mm.
liberate, or then there's probably the those who like provoke for a reaction. And I really think about also how like life provokes you, that this exchange isn't only happening with individuals, but that life has its own um, provoking that it does to see
Yeah.
where your individual experience is going to go next. Um,
Mm.
but completely opposite. And I sometimes, and we've talked about this, feel very pulled by our constitution here, our chart, and everything that makes us up. And that was one example that made me think like, I can be completely unbothered and I can realize like that that's not really like you're not going to get a reaction out of me. Or I'm going to go through this experience with so much more grace than I probably anticipated because I feel that way. And then on the other hand, when there are things that I feel limit an individual, I cannot not react to that situation. And
Mm.
it just, again, because if we're talking about, you now brought up liberation, I
Mm.
feel like those times where I get very passionate about um, change, it really has to do about helping elevate humanity.
Mm. Yeah, you mentioned things that limit people, like really provokes you. Um, is it almost like this, like the repressive nature of being trapped, where people are like trapped, or is that what you mean by limited?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Whether it's a feeling of trapped within oneself. And it's interesting that you said trapped because it then makes me think like we're in the root section, the root section, the root chakra,
Root.
the root center. Um, and this is a lot of where that energy of feeling burnt out. And he even talks about um, people who are, I can't remember the word he used. I just remember that a sign of being in the shadow. Yes, that's what he said. A sign of being in the shadow with the 39th is a feeling of fatigue.
Mm.
And here in the root center, we think about like um, stress and burnout. And I remember Nikki asked a couple questions for something, um, some workshop she was doing, and the Root Center had these questions around like, where do you feel burnt out or stressed or exhausted? Um, and around the time, I had just been reflecting a lot around my work environment and
Mm.
how I felt very much like I was in a rat race.
Mm.
And that's what made me say I'm never going to go back to that kind of work. But I realized like we don't necessarily, I think we're getting to a point where we don't have to be trapped And the feeling of trap may come from our mind thinking that we don't have options for whatever situation we're in. And I think that that fatigue is life provoking you to make a change that's going to actually better support you. So,
Mm.
um, yeah.
Yeah, the fatigue is like a reflection of that life force energy being like contained and restricted. And it just kind of makes me think again about going back to this idea of resistance. Like, where am I resisting and fighting against life and the way things are? And like other people, like, where am I wasting my energy on what other people think, what other people say, what other people are doing? Like, so I had an experience this past couple of weeks. I didn't tell you about it last week, but I was going to. And it was it was so interesting. And it also makes me think about how you said like how life is provoking us.
Mhm.
Because what I could really see when I took a step back and like observed what was happening within myself, within the other person, it was like a personal attack on me. Um, and I could see that it was actually life testing me, provoking me to respond differently. Right. So, what happened, I won't go into the details, aren't necessary. But essentially, what happened was someone who like an acquaintance who I barely know, had reached out to me a little while ago when I was going through a difficult time. And then, long story short, we'd barely know each other, but they started to kind of like attack me about the way I had or hadn't responded to them, messaging me. And my first instinct was to like apologize, was to be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
Oh,
I'm a huge empath. If you look at my chart, I have completely open emotional center, all my middle centers, the sacral, emotional solar plexus, spleen are all open. So I'm like very sensitive in these areas, a lot of anxiety, what do people think of me, a lot of fear, a lot of stress, like all these things have been patterns for me. And, um, I kind of had to sit with it. And I really had to, first of all, ground my nervous system because I felt like activated, like, oh my gosh, this person's attacking me. It feels very personal. It was very, very personal. They're attacking my character. They're attacking my intentions, like questioning and challenging my intentions. And once I like calmed down and grounded myself, I realized that this is actually a huge gift that I'm being provoked to look at, this pattern of people pleasing, this
mhm.
pattern of not valuing my own self and not like protecting my own self. And, I'm being asked to set a boundary here. Like, this person doesn't even know me and they're attacking me. Um, but I then practiced setting the boundary. I responded very calmly and kindly. And I was just like, this is not my problem. Like, I can take accountability, but I don't need to take the full responsibility here. Like, I don't need to, what's the word? Like, sacrifice my own needs and sacrifice my own self-worth, sense of self-worth, just because this person's trying to fight with me. Like, that's really how it felt. Like, they were just trying to fight with me. And it's so funny because I was reflecting on like this pattern. Over my whole life, I've always attracted people who are very intense, very like needy, quite can tend to be like a bit aggressive
Mhm.
and perhaps narcissistic traits and things like this. Like, I've had a lot of experiences throughout my life. I have the 15th gate, the 15th gene key in my um, incarnation cross. I'm just blanking out words here.
That's okay.
Um, in my incarnation cross. So anyway, I've just kind of seen these patterns. Like, I can see how this has been a pattern in my life, but it was such a gift to be able to be like, I am not going to settle for this. I'm not going to put up with this. And I don't actually have to sacrifice who I am. Like, I can be kind and loving and respond in a really empathetic and kind way, but I can also set a boundary. And that was a huge lesson for me to be like, there is another way to respond. And I think that that goes back to this, like this archetype of the warrior, like being provoked to respond differently to, and perhaps in me doing that, it gives this other person, this other individual, an opportunity to reflect on their own behavior. Perhaps not, but it's also not
Mhm.
up to me to know that, whether that's going to happen or not. But I just kind of visualize, or I can just kind of see this, like, or feel this energy of like standing in your power. And like, how much energy does that free up if I'm not wasting all this energy on worrying about what this other person thinks about me or their perception of me and trying to manage that? That's really what like people pleasing is like trying to manage other people's perceptions of you. And that was a huge lesson for me in being like, I'm not going to waste my energy on that. I can still be a caring and kind and loving person
Mhm.
without giving my energy away.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking about how I too relate, and the situation I was telling you about. It was like really caring about essentially what other people think of me, based on stories that are being shared, not from
Mm.
me. And um, you know, I'm feeling into how the energy of the gate. For some reason, I keep going back into how the 39th being connected to the root center, and the energy then traveling to the emotional solar plexus. And it's it's an opportunity, I feel, to maybe experience emotions that you're not necessarily comfortable with. Because when you say the warrior, like when I think warrior, I think of intense emotions. Like I think of fighting, and I think of um, riding into the fight and um and then protecting self, because warrior is also protecting in whatever battle. And the like I can very easily I can cry, in my own like experiences in therapy. Even most recently, therapist said to me, you're crying, you can easily get there, and it might just be a deflection or a defense, because there's other um emotions that you might not necessarily be comfortable with. And you brought up the nervous system and the root center having so much energy. Things that
Mm.
provoke you in this channel of emoting might not be, you know, they might be more intense, like surges that come
Mm.
up. Like I spent quite a bit of time last in 2024 looking at my own anger and making space for that situation that happened. I realized my own anger, and that's not an emotion that I necessarily allow myself to feel.
Mm.
um and so, I just say all of that to say, like, having experience of being uh, pushed, provoked, um really coming up against something, back to like that resistance. If we take a moment to really just be present with it, can I say this about a lot of experiences, can open us up to something, can teach us something, can allow us to feel something that we might have to like move through. And on the other end, on the back end of that comment that my therapist made, she's like, maybe right now is not the time where you need to like sit down and meditate and try to be very still. Maybe it's time to move into something a little bit more somatic, or somatic basically meaning involving the body in an intentional way. And um, for me right now, working out is really good. I'm coming up against a lot of change, some of it that I'm head first in, some of it that I've been really scared about, very emotional about. And, moving my body, whether it's like at the gym or taking some extra time to stretch my body, or I've came across this video lately of, just kind of putting your um, pressing down on your chest bone right here and taking some deep breaths. Again, activating the vagal nerve, the vagus nerve, and sort of all of that. Because, you know, I feel here with the root center being part of this mix. Actually, it is the mix. The 39th is in the root. It's just sometimes it's intense. There's an intensity here.
Absolutely. And it's really, I think, asking to find that safety. Like that's what I'm getting. That's what's coming to me right now, is like finding safety in, even when there's things provoking you or triggering you, or other people seemingly attacking you.
Exhausting you to the point of fatigue.
Yeah, right. But I love that you mentioned like the uncomfortable emotions, the being provoked. And I think that that was something that I really felt was like, there's so much discomfort for me in feeling like I've done something to hurt someone else, or feeling like I've caused pain, or even if that's, I don't know what words to use right now. But that was the uncomfortable emotion that I was really feeling, is like being misunderstood, and then feeling like, oh, it feels really uncomfortable to feel like I may have hurt someone else, even if that was not my intention. But then I also think there's so much power in like sitting with that discomfort for also my inner child, like reclaiming that power,
Mhm.
reclaiming that. um yeah, I feel like the words aren't coming out the way that I'm thinking about them. But the other thing that came to me that you were saying was, this idea of the warrior. I actually didn't picture the warrior as like someone who's actively fighting. I picture the warrior as almost this like calm, powerful energy. And what came to me, I've been doing a lot of physical work as well, like really tuning into the body. And I've been doing a lot of yoga. And in yoga, there's like these different warrior poses, the warrior one, warrior, whatever they are. Um, and, there's so much power in like that centeredness and those poses. And it just made me think of that. Like, yeah, I just wanted to share that.
And I think that even though the warrior does attack and fight, it's all from a grounded, intentional place, when it's at its gift, so to speak.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
you know, so yeah,
Because
it's
the lower frequency, it's like just fighting for the sake of it, and he
right.
talks about that. He talks about violence and how that shadow frequency is, what we see in the collective, this violence. I also really liked, I don't know if you picked up on this bit too, but I really liked about how he talked about how, if we think that like we see things on the news, we see this violence and we see these horrific things. I don't watch the news, so I don't I don't see those things, or I try not to expose myself too much. But you know, it's almost this idea of like, we think we're not responsible for that, but anytime we are engaging in this dynamic of like violence, and violence can be in the form of like, a personal attack on someone, a judgment on someone. It comes in so many attacking ourselves, being violent towards ourselves or abusive towards ourselves in all different kind of shapes and forms. But it's like we need to take responsibility for the fact that we're perpetuating that as well. We're a part of it too.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
which is why I think that it's really important for when bringing it back to like, for me, the individual experience, when I find myself being provoked by something, because to what a friend of mine said, like I am sort of unbothered about things. Um, when I am provoked, I feel it. I like my face gets red. I have a lot to say about it. I'm probably getting heated. And that's when I know, like, oh, this is something that I deeply care about. But I have to spend some more time here to fully understand what it is and how to get to it so that I don't just react and, um, you know, fight necessarily. I'm not so much of a fighter, but you know what I'm saying. Um, you know, and
It's like channeling that passion into something purposeful,
mm,
because I mean this is really about the 38th gate again, but we do both have this gate of the fighter, the 38th gate, and it's about having a fight worth fighting for, a purposeful fight. And I was actually thinking about this morning on my walk, because I've been really wanting to embody more this unbothered energy, like not letting things get to me so much and being very calm and centered and grounded. And I think there's perhaps a little bit of fear that if I do become like that, then I'll lose my passion. I'll lose that like
mm,
ability to, be passionate about the things that I really care about and that are really important to me. And I think that's just like a silly fear that I can probably let go of, because I can be both. I can be grounded and centered and calm and unbothered, while also like using my voice to express the things that are important to me and that I'm passionate about. And in fact, that's really important for both of us, being ego manifestors. That heart, speaking from the heart, is so impactful and powerful when it's channeled in a productive, um, purposeful way.
yeah. Well, when you bring more self-reflection and awareness around your human experience, I feel as if, like for me, I I know when something is um, causing a reaction of intensity. I think because I've spent time in being able to practice certain tools and skills and have an idea of what is important to me, like you can have both because there's one, if we're going off of our human design systems, like it's a gift of ours. It's
Mm.
not gonna go away. Like
Yeah.
our our fighter, uh, that warrior in us, that drive to be passionate, to have purpose is not gonna go away. And I say that because I feel like I can go through stretches of like not caring about things and like or not that I don't care and I'm just like possibly like not acknowledging them, but um I can go through periods of being more calm and then in an instant like anything will remind me of like, oh no, like you need to pay attention to that. And then there'll be other things like the situation. I learned a
Mm.
little bit about myself, but it did not need my time any longer beyond last week, you know?
Same.
And then you drop it. And
Yeah.
um, I just feel here that it really takes um some deep breaths here. Again, like I just feel like there's a lot of energy that can come from the root, like, and it can be intense. And
Mm.
so I feel, again, individual circuit, taking things moment by moment, having a lot of presence with whatever is arising for you when it comes to this channel or this gate. Um, and then from whatever your strategy and authority is, leading you forward in a way that's most correct for you.
Yeah. Without sacrificing who you are, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah. That's just what came to me. Like, and that's that groundedness, you know, because we wouldn't be provoked if we knew deep within ourselves like who we are and we were confident in that. We wouldn't, it wouldn't bother us,
Yeah.
touch us, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, I think of I just got this image of like ironically, a tree, like and the roots,
Mm.
kind of being so deep and so grounded and so sunk in its integrity that
Yes.
the wind is not phasing the tree, right? Um, and that's sort of how, like, I feel like this message is just coming through for myself. This is how I can be. I can be rooted and safe within my body and planted and um and grounded no matter where I am or where I'm going. So
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah.
very nice. I think that's all we got.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was very nice to have this conversation, and we'll see you with 40.
Yeah. See you.